Good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. Emily, how you doing?
I'm good. We've got a lot of news to get through today. Even though we're so close to the holidays, the news cycle just won't slow down.
It won't. I did want to start out with one quick personal thing, which is apologies for this show getting out as late as it is. About 2 weeks ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. That might also explain I'm kind of losing my voice at the same time. This will be our last show, plus we're doing Counterpoints Friday until the Christmas and New Year's break, so we'll see you guys again in January. They've made extraordinary advances when it comes to treatment of breast cancer, and she's already getting the treatment, and we're very confident that this will be something that we deal with in the past, but kind of have to bear with us a little bit as we go through that.
Yeah, well, we're all pulling for you guys, Ryan. You've got all your kids, a lot to worry about. And
we've got speaking of health and human services,
right? Maybe your best transition ever.
Luckily, there's going to be a very steady hand on the till.
Yeah.
RFK Jr. was on Capitol Hill yesterday, meeting with senators. Looks like he actually might make it and become Secretary of Health and Human Services. We're going to talk about that. A bunch of folks are in Doha trying to cinch up a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Saudi Arabia has gotten involved as well. We're going to talk about that. Over at Dropside News, we kind of busted the New York Times relying on a Hamas-adjacent source to verify documents. We talked to the source about those documents. He said, bro, I told the New York Times I have real doubts about whether those are authentic documents or not. And they just ran with it anyway.
I hope he did say bro.
Yeah, I don't think he said bro. But close enough. We'll get into that. AOC got crushed in her effort to become chair or ranking member of Oversight. Luigi's getting charged as a terrorist. What else we got?
Yeah, he was indicted last night, so we have updates on that. Some interesting polling. That'll be it'll be an interesting conversation topic, maybe for everyone's holiday dinner. You can talk about this poll.
I was coming out of GW Hospital on Monday.
I can't wait to see this.
I don't think we're ever going to see it, but I got stopped on the street by two reporters. Said, "Do you have a second to talk about the health insurance industry?" They're doing man-on-the-street interviews with people in Washington, D.C.
They happen to run around.
In British accents. They said they're from Sky News. I'm like, sure, I'll do this. Yeah.
Well, we won't spoil it in case they do air it, because what you said was...
At the end, they asked my name. I told them.
Amazing. Well, stay tuned, see if that goes to air. We're going to do updates from... Well, actually, there's a lot going on in Capitol Hill, so we will be talking a little bit about what happened with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Connolly for the Oversight Committee. It sounds like, I feel like we're usually talking about Republicans when we're talking about random parliamentary stuff, but this time it's Democrats.
This is a fun one, yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of parliamentary stuff randomly going on with Republicans right now as they look to keep the government funded. So we'll probably touch on that a bit as well, Ryan. Updates from Ukraine and updates from both Germany and Canada, where the leadership is in dire straits.
Yeah, the center left is collapsing all over the world.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Macron as well, maybe we can talk about that too. He's facing some stiff troubles right ahead. But to return to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's start with his trip around Capitol Hill, which seems to be going very, very well. I want to start with this mashup of clips so that you can just get a little flavor of what's been happening over the last couple of days as RFK Jr. meets to discuss his confirmation with senators. Here you go.
Can I follow up on Robert Kennedy? He's on the Hill today. He's meeting with senators. What do you say to people who are worried that his views on vaccines will translate into policies that will make their kids less safe?
No, I think he's going to be much less radical than you would think. I think he's got a very open mind, or I wouldn't have put him there. He's going to be very much less radical. But there are problems. I mean, we don't do as well as a lot of other nations, and those nations use nothing.
Week trying to gain GOP support to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Is expected to be pressed on his views on vaccines. Senator, you met with RFK Jr. yesterday. What was your takeaway?
Very impressive. I mean, here's a guy that wants to focus on health. It's called Health and Human Services. Health, not sickness. So he wants to make us healthy. It's exactly what we ought to do. I ran the biggest hospital company. I know we've got to figure out how to get people healthy, and that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to do a great job with regard to vaccines. If you listen to what he says, he is pro-vaccine. What he wants is give you information so you can decide what you put into your body or your child's body. Yeah. That makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
More information.
Senator, it's great to see you. We so appreciate it.
Is get away from guessing and do facts, do science, get behind the science and stay with it. Don't be guessing. And that's what a lot of these vaccines have done. They haven't been 100% proven. If you look at the number of vaccines these young babies get over a short period of time, it's dozens and dozens of them, and he's totally against that. He wants to make sure that parents understand the good and the bad and the ugly.
So I also grabbed about 15 minutes with Senator Tuberville after his meeting with RFK Jr. He said something similar, but in a little bit more detail. He said he talked to RFK Jr. about how he has a grandchild coming. And he was saying, you know, there are all these, like the vaccine schedule, there are all of these vaccines. And RFK Jr. said to him, we only got 3 when we were kids. And that was a little bit from their conversation, was like, it's basically you've just had all of these. It was like polio, smallpox, and something else. Like it's just been added up and added up. And so Tuberville is using this line that he thinks RFK Jr. is going to, quote, follow the science. And saw a little bit of that from Rick Scott as well. Part of this is a sincere ideological conversion from people like Tuberville, who has been now questioning people about red dye 40. I mean, you just never saw this from Republicans, Ryan. You know this better than I do. I mean, there was this ideological and political deference to the business community, and there have been sincere ideological conversions. A lot of it is obviously political. Now, let's actually skip ahead to A3, because this is what Tuberville told me. His first question was to RFK Jr. It was about abortion, he said. And this was going to be the big sticking point with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being confirmed by a Republican Senate. Josh Hawley posted a thread last night saying that he got all of these concessions, which I think are very significant concessions, whether you're like pro-choice or pro-life. These are significant concessions from someone who says that he's pro-choice. Reinstating the Mexico City policy. That's what Josh Hawley said.
And what is that
Jr. committed
for us,
foreign funding.
Non-initiated into the lingo of the abortion wars?
Taxpayer funding for abortion internationally and domestically is what he committed to Hawley.
That's Mexico City.
Mexico City is foreign, right? Yeah. But he also said in the same post that he would end taxpayer funding for abortions domestically.
And what does that mean?
Probably Planned Parenthood. Taxpayer funding.
Because currently Planned Parenthood doesn't use the money that it gets from the federal government for abortion services, but what he's saying is don't give them a penny, period.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, they don't specifically say that, but that's how Republicans would interpret it. And I think other people already have interpreted that way. Reinstating the bar on Title X funds going to organizations that promote abortion, so that's probably also an umbrella on Planned Parenthood. I'm not entirely sure about that. But he also said, and I think this is the most significant, that all of his deputies, according to Hawley, at HHS would be pro-life. So that's basically Robert F. Kennedy Jr., man who says he is pro-choice, saying, I will have a pro-life Health and Human Services department.
Right.
And
then the problem there is that Planned Parenthood, as you know, does an enormous amount of health care services for low-income women who use them because they can't get any services anywhere else. So he's saying he's all about health, but obviously those types of services are crucial to health, but he's just going to kind of capitulate on it in order to get in there. I guess nobody should have expected him to die on like the altar of women's rights. Like that's not what RFK Jr. was ever going to do.
His like big life's mission is vaccines, and pharma and food, and yeah, I would imagine. I mean, he's always actually talked about this in the language of bodily autonomy, which is where it gets really tricky for him to now come out and talk about how he'll be running essentially a pro-life HHS. The reason that it's worth going through this Hawley thread is that this is enough. I think this will be enough to put him on a glide path to confirmation with Senate Republicans. This should satisfy them for the most part. On the pro-life issue. On the issue of abortion, like this is going to settle the pro-life groups down. They're going to stop lobbying against him or chirping against him. And now his tough thing is going to be, we heard Trump address it, is going to be talking to like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins about vaccines and people who are even less moderate than them. Tuberville, Scott said they've been satisfied in their conversations, but that's still a sticking point.
Yeah, my guess would be, and tell me if you think I'm right, getting into the Republican mind, that as long as he's good for them on abortion, they actually don't care about HHS. It's like not a top tier concern of theirs.
Yeah.
Like, are they really? Oh no, he's going to run HHS into the ground. Oh boy, that would be so sad for Republicans if something like that happened.
Well, what's funny is that I think they used to care about HHS to like protect business interests. right? You know what I mean?
maybe.
Like it was.
It is interesting that they're like, okay, they're adopting some of the crunchy, like hippie vibes around,
Yeah.
like what you would call like a raw milk politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But Trump seems to like be nowhere near that, and so that's why you saw at the top of the segment there him saying like, no, he's not really into all that. So I think basically what they're trying to say is, okay, he's going to be really good on abortion for us, and he's not actually going to do these things. He's not going to ban the vaccines. He's not going to stop you from getting the vaccines. He might have out there ideas about it, but he's not actually going to implement them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a funny, way to kind of get yourself through. But
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it'll probably work at this point. Although Tuberville told me he thinks that Democrats are essentially saving their biggest attacks on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. until after the holidays, when the confirmation process is really heating up, and actually, like, people have to make the decision to vote yes or no. So we'll.
Do you think he gets through?
As of right now, I would say yes. I think there's just like the voters really, really like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The Republican base really likes Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So
I also think just from a Democratic small d perspective, like if you win the White House and you run saying you're going to like bring a certain person into the White House,
right.
It's like, all right, guy won.
Yeah.
He said he was going to put this guy in a job that's very similar to this. Like this is not a surprise.
Yeah.
And people voted for him, so go ahead.
Well, and really quickly, this is a great transition to A2, if we can go back to a great Christian Parenti piece in Compact about how RFK Jr. could, quote, take on the CIA. Now, you can't do that from HHS, but the position you can do that from is a trusted Trump advisor, a literal member of his cabinet, which RFK Jr. now is. That's another thing I've been trying to sort of sniff out a little bit is like, are you guys sort of treating him as the crazy hippie uncle at the Thanksgiving table who you just sort of like, wink and at each other across the table while he's talking about whatever? No, he's actually very much in the inner circle. He is trusted and valued. And so to that extent, he could do a little bit of what Parenti talks about here. And
the CIA links to the HHS are kind of interesting. So he writes at one point, this is, I thought, a really interesting passage. Parenti writes, between 2013 and 2020, USAID, which is basically a CIA front, along with Anthony Fauci's NIAID and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency of the U.S. Department of Defense, all gave millions of dollars to a New York-based nonprofit called EcoHealth Alliance. We've reported about that over and over. Run by Dr. Peter Daszak, EcoHealth Alliance in turn funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In 2015, EcoHealth Alliance also pitched In-Q-Tel, which is basically the CIA's private equity firm, for funding with a proposal called, quote, identifying predictable patterns in disease emergence. We don't know the results of these proposals because In-Q-Tel provides limited public information on its investments. And then Parenti writes, though thoroughly documented, this set of facts is so insane that they make any person reiterating them sound insane by association. It's one of the kind of advantages that the CIA and the USAID and the Defense Department have had in the entire bioweapons space is that it just sounds completely nuts. And RFK Jr. has written an entire book about this.
Yes.
The Truth About Wuhan, I think it's called, or something like that.
It was about Fauci.
Something. Anyway, in any event, this is not a kind of hobby horse for him. Like, this could get interesting.
Yeah, you have to.
And meanwhile,
know.
in the NDAA, last
Right.
night they shoveled a whole bunch more money towards gain-of-function research that's headed towards passage this week.
Yes, and towards the Global Engagement Center that was funneling money towards basically websites that were recommending suppression of, for example, the Federalist and the Daily Wire. So it's the NDAA is getting interesting, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and to your point about Parenti's links from HHS, USAID to EcoHealth and all of these things, like you, in order to actually change this, have to basically know the ins and outs. Like you need to do chapter and verse in them while you're sleeping, and he can do that, which should be terrifying to the people who benefit from those funds.
And I don't think RFK Jr. remotely has all the answers here, but I also know that we are a deeply unhealthy country.
Yeah.
You can just travel around the country or look around, and you can just see it. Like we need help. Like we're not in a good place.
Yeah.
And the corporate capture of our food, our medicines is like obviously a huge problem. So if RFK Jr. comes in as a wrecking ball, just because he doesn't know how to rebuild it doesn't mean that a little bit of creative destruction wouldn't be useful. Because whatever path we're on is not a good one.
Right. Yeah, creative destruction.
Like the pollutants, the chemicals, the plastics,
yeah.
like all of it together is like we're on a suicide path.
Yeah, creative destruction is, I think, the best case scenario here. So perhaps
That's what people voted for. So
it's exactly what people
let
voted
the wrecking
for.
ball swing.
Although Tuberville also told me he was satisfied by RFK Jr.'s answers on climate, so that might not be so good for the crunchy left.
What did Tuberville hear?
I don't know. I wasn't there, Ryan. I just asked questions.
RFK Jr. is willing to like give up on climate too.
Yeah, he's like.
Oh, so actually, I bet what. So here's how I bet RFK Jr. finesses the climate issue with deniers like Tuberville. What I bet he said is that we overemphasize carbon.
Yeah.
And that we don't emphasize enough the problems of plastics, which come from carbon, by the way. Don't tell Tuberville that. And all the other poisons that go into our bloodstream and our actual streams.
Yeah.
And so RFK Jr. is not saying climate is not a problem. He's saying that a monomaniacal fixation just on climate misses the holistic problems facing the Earth.
But then
I think Tuberville would hear that and be like, oh, he's with me. He doesn't care about climate either.
He literally said he agrees with me on climate.
Yeah, so
you can watch that.
I guarantee you that's how that conversation went, and Tuberville, it was like, whoop.
Yeah. Well, don't tell anybody where the plastic comes from, because then it gets really sticky.
Yeah.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.